Vayichan sham Yisrael enged ha'ar kulanu ke'echad.
V'shus Morai Rabosai Kal Hakotel Kodesh Hazeh. Vayichan sham Yisrael. Our theme, the subject. We were not only standing at the foot of the mountain, but at the foot of our greatest achievement and for our highest calling. This required absolute unity. There was no other way that we could hear the word of God and accept the Torah. The unity was not only a prerequisite to accept the Torah, but it also implied a technicality. In other words, a people which is united is far more puissant and efficacious and powerful than one that is not united. A team of 12 is more powerful than 15 individuals, or if you wish, 350 united are stronger than 500 individuals. It's like the well-known story that a professor taught a course in university, well over 100 students, and he did not administer the final. It was done by a proctor, or in Britain it's called an invigilator, who invigilates the invigilation. And the proctor said to the students, listen here, you have 1 hour and 20 minutes for this exam and not 1 second longer. You go 1 minute over 1 hour and 20 minutes and you have failed. 1 hour and 20 minutes later, there's a neat little pile of exams on the teacher's desk. And one student was still copiously filling out his exam. When 3 more minutes had lapsed, he attempted to hand in his paper, but the proctor refused to accept it. And the proctor said, you have failed. The student said, do you know who I am? He said, I don't know, and I don't care. The student took off his eyeglasses, stared him in the eyes, and he said, do you know my name? He said, I don't know, and I don't care. The student said, great. Took the test, shoved it in the middle of the pile, and ran away. That's the power of unity. What you couldn't accomplish by yourself, you can't accomplish when you're together. An individual with a united group carries far more weight. Hence, the pasuk says regarding Kabbalah Torah, this is in Shmos Yutes, V'yomer Hashem al Moshe ered ha'ed ba'am pen yeharsu el Hashem liros nafal mimenu rav. There's going to be such a overpowering amount of kedusha, of holiness, emanating from that mountain, where you're seeing the shofar, things that a man cannot do, beyond man's ken. You see what you cannot hear, and you hear what you cannot see, and all this is going on. There's such an amount of kedusha that people were afraid. They would rush to the mountain, and God warned them through Moshe that if you go to the mountain, the nafal mimenu rav. We're talking really about one individual, but many will perish. So the Mechilta picks up on this, and it says that even in those circumstances, but if one Jew were to die, one who was united, God would view it as if many had perished. From this, Rav Hanoch Teller derives that just as the Almighty will not countenance the loss of even a single person, we have to feel that same sense of responsibility for all of our brothers and sisters, both physically and spiritually. Hence, how appreciative we are to Rav Targin, who put together this enormous program of putting all of us together. It's high time something like this happened. And it highlights how every one of us is precious and we're all united to accept the Torah. Now, the term unity, achdus, is a term which I fear is a tad hollow. It's one of those terms which is thrown about, bandied about so often, but what is done about it? By way of analogy, Chassid said to the Rebbe, I want you to daven that my wife should die. What? Yeah, I want you to daven. What are you talking about? Yeah, I want you to pray my wife should die. What are you talking about? I said, listen here, I'm a poor man. And if my wife dies, pardon me, I'm a poor man. If I have to give her a get, if I have to divorce her, it'll cost me a fortune. But if she dies, it doesn't cost me a penny. The Rebbe said, I have a better idea. Chazal teach that if you pledge money to tzedakah and you don't deliver, within a year your spouse will die. The Rebbe said, and the Chassid said, Rebbe, that's brilliant. It was right before Rosh Hashanah. They gave him after on Shabbos. He pledged 500 rubles to tzedakah. The Gabayan came on Sunday. He said, I'm not giving. That happened Rosh Hashanah time. Half a year later, he went to the Rebbe and said, Rebbe, it's already Purim. She hasn't even sneezed yet. The Rebbe said, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. It only works if you don't want it to work. Now what am I supposed to do? I suggest you go out and buy her a fancy gift. Maybe this will help. And he was desperate. So he went out and bought a fancy, Delancey schmancy gift. She couldn't believe it. He hadn't bought her anything from the year they were married. She was so grateful. She made him a gourmet meal, which he loved. He bought her another gift. bought another gift, another gourmet meal, another gift. Came Elul time a year later, they were lovers and said, "Hey, Rebbe, I don't want her to die. There's a way out. What's that? You have to get the tzedakah." "Oh no, oh yes." Not to talk about it, but you need concretion. So we talk a lot about Achdus, and maybe now this year we're going to do something about it and really mean it. We're talking about the most critical thing in the world, which is being qualified to receive and accept the Torah. By way of analogy, we're all aware of the fact that the second temple was destroyed because of sinas chinam, groundless hatred, meaning that Torah was studied, and mitzvos were observed, and charity was performed, and yet, the consequence of sinas chinam, groundless hatred, could not be negated by all the good that was done. Now, I'm not saying anything novel because everyone knows this passage from the Talmud, and there's so many rabbinic sermons about it, and there's so many musar shmuzim, but very few have stopped hating as a consequence to this passage of Chazal. And why is this? So my friend said a very good idea. He said because the Talmud limits its condemnation to sinas chinam, to groundless hatred. And everybody always rationalizes, my hatred is not groundless, their hatred is pointless, but mine has a point. There's a point to my hatred. So it's not groundless, it's not baseless, there is something to it. So people assume that the condemnation of the Talmud does not refer to me. That was just an analogy. Back to the unity. How will we know, or what is the shear, what's the measurement for unity that would qualify us to receive the Torah? Now we know that a lot of Judaism is governed, and it's very precise by measurements. On Pesach night we eat a kazayis of matzah, toch k'dei chilas pras. And the matzah has to be baked within 18 minutes, and it has to be mayim shalanu, it has to be matzah that was guarded. On Shabbat you violate carrying if you go from Reshut HaYachid to Reshut HaRabim, from private domain to public domain, or vice versa, public domain to private domain, where you carry 4 amot for amos in public domain, or you violate cooking on Shabbat for a liquid when it's yad solevis, when your hand will recoil. So what is the measurement, what's the shear for achdus, for unity, that we know that we've done it the right amount and we can receive the Torah? You're not going to find this in Shulchan Aruch because it doesn't say so in Shulchan Aruch. But I would like to propose there is a concept called Ma'aser Rav. Ma'aser Rav means that often the Talmud will tell you halacha, and then after the halacha it tells a story about a Tana, about a Memorah, and we can derive from this story that their practice was in sync with this halacha. And if it wasn't, then that would be more room to Talmud to try and understand what is in fact the halacha. This is called the Ma'aser Rav. Thus, you go to a wedding, and you're at a smorgasbord, and there's all kinds of dishes, you don't even recognize them. And you're not mishabur to know what bracha to make, not that would exactly help. And you see Reb David Cohen, the great posek, go over and make a butter in the name of Zonos. So you can, based on Ma'aser Rav, make him Zonos. He did it. That's adequate. That you can do halacha based on that. So I can't tell you the shear of achdus, but I want to tell you one or two Ma'aser Rav, stories of people that portray what we're trying to achieve. It sort of sets the benchmark higher, the higher water level that we need. Rav Nosson Finkel from Chicago, the great nearest yeshiva, the greatest yeshiva in contemporaneous society, was the American Yankee Doodle. Co-ed school, co-ed camp. When he came to the mirror as a 10th grader and came to meet his family, who was the Finkel family, he was sporting a Chicago Cubs baseball cap. Now, his policy of his uncle, the Rosh Yeshiva, Eliezer Yehuda Finkel, Reb Lezer was that Torah is for everyone. There's no limit. It doesn't mean, my bench, I learn in the mirror. And on my bench, I'm not talking about a hypothetical, on my bench where I sit, there is a carpenter, a world-class physicist, a boy from Gateshead, a boy from Bnei Brak, a boy from Brooklyn, and a kid like me. And that's the mirror. It's all unified through learning. And Reb Lezer wanted to demonstrate that Torah is for everyone. So he had the doors to yeshiva removed in the most demonstrative way, showing everyone can come. And I remember that in the winter, until the Knesset made a law that every building for security reasons had to have a door, there was a shallow lake as you came to the yeshiva whenever it was raining, because it went right into the building. So there was a convocation of women on Rosh Chodesh Av. The women call it Lashon Hara Day. They mean just the opposite. The day where you are careful not to engage in Lashon Hara. And Rav Nosson was one of the speakers. And he got up with his beautiful, stunning naivete, and he said, I don't get it. What's the problem of Lashon Hara? There's a mitzvah, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. And for a person who understands that we have to love everyone, then indeed you'll never engage in Lashon Hara. Another example, prior to Hasidus, before the Baal Shem Tov, God was a very difficult figure to reach. And the route to God was via fasting and separation and self-mortification. And there was no mass appeal. It was only for ascetic individuals. And Hasidus stressed just the opposite. God is everywhere, like that kindergarten song, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, up, up. He's everywhere. And he's easy to reach, provided, Karov Hashem Lakol, provided contingent that you are sincere. L'chol shikru ve'emes. That gateway is open to all, even the lowly, even the unrighteous. Previously it had been assumed that only a scholar could serve God with all the minutiae, but now we see, taught the Baal Shem, that as long as you're sincere and you have that craving for God, and that's the well-known story that there was a boy, a shepherd, ignorant, unschooled. He came to Shul on Shabbos, so everyone deep into their devotions, and he too wanted to express his longing, craving to the Almighty, but he didn't know how. So he took out his recorder and began to blow on the whistle. Everyone said, Ashamda, disgrace. Hashem said, no. I saw that our tefillos were lodged and not yet able to break into Shemayim, into the heavens, till that sincere blowing of the recorder that let them in. So the Baal Shem said, there's three things I want people to devote themselves to. Avos Torah, the love of Torah, Avos Hashem, the love of God, and Avos Yisrael, the love of your fellow Jew. And one time someone asked him, how can we achieve Avos Hashem, the love of God? We don't see him, we can't feel him, we can't touch him, he is an abstraction. And the Baal Shem responded, you work on Avos Yisrael, you work on caring about each and every Jew. They're real, they're all around you. You feel unified with them, that will bring you to Avos Hashem. Rebbe Melech was Baal Shem Tov was the first generation of Chassidus. The third generation was Rebbe Melech in Galicia. And Rebbe Melech and his holy brother Zusha went on self-imposed exiles, the holy brothers as they were called, and they would spread the message of Avos Yisrael, and we have to be unified. One time Rebbe Melech came home after a self-imposed exile, and as he came through the gates of Lezhensk, someone said to him, you know, your Eliezer is very sick. And as soon as he heard that his son was very sick, he ran home. And he said to his Rebbe, what's with Eliezer? He's fine, right now he's in Cheder. No, I heard he's very sick. He said, no, he's fine. Oh, I get it. Down the block there's an Eliezer. He truly is very sick, but our Eliezer is just fine. Rebbe Melech resumed breathing. He said, what have I done? It's okay for someone else's son to be ill, but not my own son? What have I accomplished in my Golis? Gunish is Gunish. He went back right on to Golis, into exile again. And the more I thought about this concept of unity and those who excel in it, I became aware of a very profound distinction. And that is, if you think about those people who really work for Achdus, they want to unify, be it in your shul or in your community or on a national level, these people invariably will notice are much more mature individuals without self-serving agendas. And those who don't hear the call to Achdus are just the opposite. The Medrash says, and we see in reality, a baby is born with a clenched fist, and all of life and growth and maturation is to turn from that closed fist to an open hand. When you leave the world, the hand is open. Indeed, if it's not, the Cheder Klish will open the hand. At least you should leave this world with an open hand, to know to give to others. From clenched fist, the baby wants it all, to the end, to understanding you have to give to others. And all of life and growth and maturation is bridging that rubric from a closed fist to an open hand. So that's called maturity. And the bracha we give to a baby is Zeh Katan Gadoliyah, that made this small one become big, or perhaps better, great. And Gadol means one who understands the needs of others. Not selfish, but he's focused on others. And thus it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayigdal Moshe, Vayetzel Echad, and Moshe became great, and he reached that maturity going out to his brethren. And the pasuk says, Vayetzel Echad, Vayar b'sivlosam, and he saw their afflictions. Rashi comments, Nasan Einav v'libo lios meitzer aleihem. He felt their pain with his eyes and with his heart. What made Moshe great and a gadol? He could have remained in the lap of luxury in the palace of the king, but he went out and felt the pain of his brethren. I have a friend in Switzerland. I was there when this story happened about 30 years ago. And he described to me, and those we're talking about in the 1980s, he described to me, before there were cell phones and internet, you could look things up. So he described to me that his son, Lolena, was very, very, very sick. He was in a quarantine ward in a hospital, in an intensive care unit in one of the hospitals in Zurich. And at 2:30 in the morning, the doctors came over to him and they said to him that your son is not going to make it. And at this point, it's just a hemorrhage of our time and effort because he's not improving and we're prolonging something which cannot be prolonged. So therefore, it's time to curtail all of the treatment. My friend understood what the doctors were saying, but he said, this is not a decision I can make on my own. I need to consult with my rabbi. He said, suit yourself. It was 2:30 in the morning. He was obviously very uncomfortable to call his rabbi, but this was literally pikuach nefesh. So he called the gadol of Europe, certainly the gadol of Switzerland, Moshe Soloveitchik, elderly man, and Rav Moshe responded, you may allow the doctors to do what they wish to do. That was 2:30 in the morning. After 4 o'clock, before it was pre-dawn, my friend said he looked out and there were two figures. And it was a quarantine ward, so to come in you have to be wearing white gowns. And he said they looked like malachim, like angels walking in. And there was Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, septuagenarians, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik and his Rebbe walking in. He said, Rebbe, what are you doing here? He said, at this difficult time, we didn't want you to be by yourself. We wanted to be with you. He said, but you didn't even know which hospital I was in. He said, that is true. So we got into a taxi. If I'm not mistaken, there are 11 hospitals in Zurich. We went from hospital to hospital to hospital. We found out where you were, and here we are to be with you. That's Meitzer Aleim, to feel their pain. That's greatness. Divisiveness is going to bring us to weakness, the inability to achieve. And we can't help but focus at this time on Talmidei Rebbe Akiva, who perished during Yemei HaSfira. And it's not our place to condemn, but clearly their strength was not unity. And the toll of their lack of unity was appalling. There was a time when the whole world was united, everyone. But instead of utilizing this achdus for the correct purpose, it was perverted and corrupted, as the pasuk says, "V'hi kol haaretz safa achas udvar machodim." Just prior to the Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Bavel, the whole world was united. It was of one language and common purpose, and all of the ingredients for greatness were present. They spoke the holy tongue. And if they desired guidance, they could go to Shem, to Avram, to Noach. But as happens so often in human history, they elected to ignore the spiritual opportunities, instead chose self-aggrandizement and power. Now it seems to us ludicrous that those people who firsthand had evidence of the flood could rationalize ignoring the will of God, who controls the universe. And yet, that is man's capacity for self-deception. A man can negate reality and build substance around a vacuum. And it seems to me equally ludicrous that the greatest manifestation, certainly in my lifetime, of God's awesome power, in the blink of an eye, people went from normal lifestyle to where you're scared of your neighbor, you're almost scared of your shadow. And we have to go to isolation into our own homes. So now it's up to us. We can use this shudder and wake up to bond together, or we can forge on business as usual and not utilize the opportunity of the Vayichan Shalom, of coming together. And as incredible as it sounds, even during the Holocaust, where there was an enmity between competing Jewish groups, which delayed the coordination to resist the Nazis. It's not very well known, but in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, there were two very disparate groups. The socialist Zionists and their bitter political foes, the revisionist Zionists, and they did not unite. And this fact is better perhaps contrasted to the story of Esther Rab in the Sobibor Uprising, where everyone understood whoever had tried to escape from Sobibor, one of the death camps, everyone who survived, who remained behind, had to pay a very heavy price, and I'll spare you the incredible torture which they suffered. So when they put together that plan of the Soviet War uprising, the idea was everyone is going. No one is staying behind. And no one will have to pay the price for those who escaped. And it was and remains the greatest act of uprising during the Holocaust. Divisiveness and fragmentation are antithetical to Torah. The stronger one's bonds to other Jews, the more receptive you become to integrating the Torah. Indeed, 5 of the 10 dibros, I don't like calling them commandments, that were given at Sinai relate directly to avoiding offensive behavior toward one's neighbor. When we say the blessings of the Torah, we refer to God not as one who gave the Torah, but in the present tense, as one who gives the Torah. Beyond being an event of history, the giving of the Torah is an ongoing process which we're looking forward to celebrating. Accordingly, you have to constantly be in a state of preparation, preparedness, like our forefathers in Midbar, ki ish echad, b'lev echad. And we look forward to the day, certainly me, that we can all be together back in the Beis Knesset with the gathering of all of our people, and even more significantly, with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu in the Beis HaMikdash. Ki ish echad, b'lev echad.